Hello everyone, it's Phil here, welcome to another video. This is another video build guide. I'm building the ultimate 3dfx Voodoo 5 Glide gaming PC. Usually I assemble my PCs on a test bench, but this time I'm actually putting everything inside a case and I filmed it. I'm going to use time-lapse, so it's quite easy to follow all the steps that I completed to finish this PC. The processor driving this machine is the Pentium 3S 1.4 GHz. It's a very fast processor, has 512 KB of cache, and is based on Intel Duality core. You need to be a little bit careful when it comes to the cooler for the Pentium 3S. The Duality is a little bit taller than the usual Pentium 3 copper wire. That's because of the integrated heat spreader. So if you're mounting a normal socket 370 or a normal socket A cooler, you'll find that a lot of force is actually applied onto the mounting latches. I've had a motherboard where the latches actually snapped off. The cooler I'm using is a StarTech socket A cooler. Firstly, it's rated for the Pentium 3 up to 1.4 GHz, but also it has 3 latches on both sides. And this motherboard, you can actually see it has 2 latches on the socket, so that will spread the force a little bit. The other thing I do recommend is if you're using a standard Pentium 3 cooler on the Intel Duality, is that you loosen the tension a little bit. So what I did in my video, I actually took the cooler apart and then I just bent that clamp a little bit to just have a little bit less force. Then I'm just applying some thermal paste and attaching the cooler to the motherboard. You need a compatible motherboard, and usually I use branded motherboards like Open, Gigabyte, Asus and so on. However, I found a really cool Acer OEM motherboard. The model number is S58M. I've got 2 of them and they actually benchmark better than the other Duality boards I've got from Gigabyte and Open. Had really good experiences with this motherboard. So don't discount OEM motherboards, they might be a lot better than you think, and it actually did have tweaking options for the memory timings, which I was actually taking advantage of. For the memory, I'm using a standard 512 MB PC 133 SD RAM stick. It is rated at cache latency 3, however, I just set the BIOS to cache latency 2, ran a mem test and did not encounter any errors. Memory timings on these old computers are quite critical, so the faster your memory timings, the faster your machine will perform. Also replace the coin battery. I've put in a new Energizer coin battery into the machine. It's very handy to have, but do clear the CMOS before you start a new build. You want to reset everything to the default settings, just in case the RAM settings, for example, are too tight and your machine won't post otherwise. I do recommend that you assemble the processor, the cooler and the memory outside of the case. It's a lot easier to work with. After that, you need to insert the I/O shield at the back of your ATX case and then just insert and install the motherboard securely by fastening a few screws. By the way, the case I'm using is a Gigabyte GZM series case and it comes with its own power supply. You can see the specs in the picture. The motherboard has most of the components integrated. It even has a sound card, an Ethernet port, game port and all sorts of other things. So the only 2 expansion cards we need is the graphics card. It's a 3dfx Voodoo 5 5500, the AGP version, and a sound card. I'm using the Diamond Monster Sound MX300. That's based on the Oriel Vortex 2 sound chip. For storage, I'm using 3 storage devices. First up, we've got the hard drive. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you know that I like to use modern hard drives with SATA to IDE adapters. This video is no exception. I'm using a modern Samsung 2TB SATA 3 hard drive. Using Seagate cTools, which is a boot CD which you can download from the Seagate website, I've limited the capacity to 120 GB. That makes sure there are no issues with the BIOS and Windows 98. I'm using a SATA to IDE adapter and the hard drive is configured as master. The second storage device is a standard IDE DVD RW drive. I've configured this as slave drive and it's running on the same IDE ribbon cable attached to the primary IDE controller. Finally, I'm using the good old Gotek floppy emulator. It features in every one of my machines because it's so reliable and just works. I've built myself a little USB thumb drive with around 50 floppy images, and I've printed out a list that has all the images on there, so I know which software is on what image. So definitely goes into this machine as well. This is the part that I'll probably enjoy the least, and that's wiring up all the power cables and doing a bit of cable management. I don't try to make it too neat, it's not an art exhibition. I'll just do my best so the cables are nicely and securely tucked away and no cable can get into fans and things like that. The front panel header was a bit of a pain in this machine because the Voodoo card is so long, it's actually sitting on top of the front header, so I had to bend the pins a little bit forward. The other issue I had was I ran into the problem that some of these spots I couldn't quite reach, so I had to remove some cards again and then try again. Especially connecting the audio lead to the analog output of the CD-ROM and then to the sound card was a little bit tricky. So the video is a little bit long-winded, but thanks to time-lapse it's not too much to look at. Okay, so the machine is working fine. We get the good old power on self-test post beep, everything is ready to go. We get an error about the CMOS, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to have fresh settings. So what I'm doing now is I'm going into the BIOS, making some tweaks, disabling resources I don't need, making sure that the memory speed is set to cache latency 2, and then I'm installing Windows 98, formatting my 120GB partition. I've got an unattended installation file that I use. It makes installing Windows 98 really quick. This machine is very fast, it does it in less than 10 minutes. After that, I need to install a few drivers. I'm installing the Intel chipset driver 3.20.1008. Next up is the 3dfx Voodoo driver. I'm going with 4.12.01.0666. Next up, the Oriel Vortex 2 drivers. I'm using version 2048. I'm also installing the Ethernet drivers. This motherboard has an Intel Pro /100VE 100 megabit wireless Ethernet chipset on board. And finally, just a DirectX 8.1. After this video, we're gonna have a look at some benchmarks, so enjoy this part. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. This machine is really awesome, delivering high performance even at 1600 by 1200. Personally, I think that resolution is too high because the games back in the day, they didn't scale the user interface, so you'll find that your health or your map is very small. So I do recommend playing at 1024 by 768, maybe at 1280 by 1024, but that's already making things a little bit hard to see. At that resolution, the Voodoo 5 5500 is a beast. Unreal runs flawless, and really this machine is perfect for Unreal, so if that's a game you want to experience, then you'll have a ton of fun. The sound quality is also fantastic. Thanks to the Unreal Vortex 2 and the A3D technology, you get surround effects over headphones, so I can highly recommend the sound card. It also has excellent DOS compatibility, especially with late era DOS games, and if you're into some high resolution MS-DOS gaming, then this machine will also handle the task fine. As always, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, any comments down below, and I'll see you soon in my next video project.